I quite like to go back to the ancient Greek philosophers because, in a way, I agree with Alfred Whitehead, who said that basically the best way to characterize Western philosophy is to say that it's a series of footnotes to Plato. so let's go back to Plato for just a second, and say how in Plato's dialogues, the main character in Plato's dialogues is Socrates, who famously has said that an unexamined life is not worth living. And the idea is, it's kind of a bit harsh, not worth living. All right. It's like,
An unexamined life?
exactly. So the
Okay.
idea is that you should, in order to find meaning in your life and meaning in the world and everything, you should start from examining your own life and thinking, how do I live my life? And knowing yourself. This is something that Socrates brings up in his Apologia. This is the defense. And when he was sentenced to death, he was kind of telling how he lived his life and how he decided is the most sensible way to live life. And he was talking about this dictum that was not sculpted,
Engraved?
engraved. Oh, thank you. On
Yeah.
top of the Oracle of Apollo in Delphi, which said, "Know thyself." And this was, he
Yes.
said,
It's a famous saying, right?
exactly
Know thyself.
right.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
this is what he built this whole idea, that you should really know yourself and know what it is about you that, means that you have some place in the world that, kind of allows you to develop as well, allows you to find your spot in the society and with everyone else. And with this examination of your own life and what is your place in it, you can adopt this kind of ever-growing self-improvement ethos that Plato was always promoting as well. That he always said that humans shouldn't be the kind of creatures who just are. Humans should always be becoming something better, because we can always improve, right?
Okay.
And then in the philosophy of Aristotle, we find a really excellent way to kind of systematize how we should do that. And Aristotle was talking about the life of eudaimonia. Eudaimonia is usually translated into English as flourishing or human fulfillment, something like this.
Uh-huh.
And he associated this with a life of virtue, a life in which we hone such virtues in us as wisdom, courage, temperance, justice, things like this.
So these are the Stoic virtues as well.
Absolutely. So the Stoics took it later from Aristotle as well. You're totally. And when Marcus Aurelius, for example, is writing about this, he's referring absolutely to Aristotle as well. But it's not only the Greeks who would think of that sort of stuff. If you travel half the world, go to China, Confucius was talking about fairly similar things in a way. It's also kind of very focused on self-improvement, virtue. Maybe in Confucianism, there's a bit more emphasis of the kind of community and relationships and social harmony, rather than it's a bit less individualistic, let's say. But it's a fairly common idea. And this already gives us a little bit of structure to all of this freedom of choosing meanings in life, right? We should choose the sort of life that allows us to develop our virtue. And this is what will give a part of what will give meaning to our life, right? We will become a wise person. We will become a just person. We will become a person who, with their courage and justice and wisdom and whatever else, will help the others to create a better society, a better community, a better life for your polis, as the Greeks would say, so for your city. But we would probably say for our nations, for our neighbors, for our communities of any sort, right?
It's interesting how what you just mentioned has many layers. Like you're starting from the self, then the community, then the country, then then like the world maybe. So it looks like meaning has multiple levels of contribution or let's say levels of actions. Correct?
Absolutely, yeah. And you can develop it on all of those levels at the same time. I think this is probably one of the better ways to approach this as well. And kind of proceeding with this, I don't know, what's the better, honor used to be the word that people would have used in the past. Right now, we probably use the word integrity more, kind of doing what's right, regardless whether it's kind of good for you, right? But just doing it what's right for
doing the right thing. Yeah.
exactly, right? And I think right now, this is actually an excellent thing to follow. I am actually really trying to promote this in my own writing as well, because I think that today's world is full of all sorts of injustices or other kind of sufferings that different communities in the world suffer from. And there's so much for us to do to, create a better world, not just for ourselves, but also for others. And I think that perhaps this is also what makes it a bit difficult to find this meaning, because our Western culture in the recent decades has been so focused on individualism, on doing the things that are good for yourself, being happy, you're worth everything, and everyone should receive, prizes for everything all this time. But actually, it's not necessarily what gives us meaning, according to these sort of philosophies that I just mentioned. It's giving back to others that really gives us this sort of feeling like we do something worthwhile in the world.
I see. It's this sense of contribution as well, probably, right?
Absolutely. And you mentioned Stoics as well, and Stoics were definitely also very focused on pursuit of virtue and eudaimonia and all that, but that was always not for the sake of perfecting yourself for the sake of perfecting yourself, right? That's not the point. The point is you perfect yourself so that you can do something good for everybody else. When you read Marcus Aurelius, for example, and his meditations, his prime objective was to be a good emperor, right? And there's a fascinating story of this as well, because I don't know if you or the listeners know the history of how this unfolded in the Roman Empire at the time. But basically, before Marcus Aurelius, the emperor was Antoninus Pius, and before him it was Hadrian. And Hadrian was he had a temper. He would
Okay.
basically react.
Emotional.
Yeah, exactly. He would get angry. He would really react emotionally and not make the best decisions for the empire in the views of, well, Marcus Aurelius or other people as well. And when he was superseded by Antoninus Pius, Marcus Aurelius really admired Antoninus Pius. He said that this was kind of the model emperor who was actually really good for Rome, right? And he always wanted to be like him. I mean, Marcus Aurelius thought that he was not as good because he had trouble managing his own emotions. In particular, he had anger issues, and he was trying to learn to be better at it so that he can be as good as emperor as Antoninus Pius and never fall down the same trap that Hadrian fell down, becoming this, having this temper that actually was really bad. But the point is, it was really bad for whom? It was really bad for Rome, right? It was really bad for the people that he wanted to serve. So he very much launched himself on this massive journey of self-improvement that was in which he wrote the meditations and did a lot of studying of Stoic philosophy, because he wanted to perfect himself so that he can be a better emperor and better serve his people. And once again, it's kind of not for your own sake that you're doing this, right? You're doing it for the sake of others.